Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show, bringing you another really fascinating guest today involved in creating a better tomorrow. Today we have the honor of being joined by Julie Lenzer, who currently serves as Chief Innovation Officer at the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute, or ARMI, and BioFabUSA. And ARMI is one of the 14 institutes within the Manufacturing USA network, which is a member-driven nonprofit organization. And their mission is ultimately make practical the large-scale manufacturing of bioengineered tissues and tissue-related technologies. BioFabUSA was created by ARMI to establish the lead to make progress in large-scale manufacturing of these engineered tissues for regenerative medicine research, ultimately taking a lot of these foundational breakthroughs that we've been seeing over the years into larger scale potential for life-changing possibilities. Prior to this role, Julie served as the commissioner of the Maryland Economic Development Commission, as well as Chief Innovation Officer at University of Maryland, fostering and supporting their innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology commercialization enterprise there, including development of the university's research park, their discovery district, the Greater College Park Initiative. She was also involved in promoting and facilitating university-wide collaboration to launch startup ventures based on the university's intellectual property, supporting the entrepreneurs, small business across mixed, augmented, and virtual reality innovation center, the Maryland Small Business Development Center, and the TechPort incubator in St. Mary's County. Prior to that role, Julie led the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship within the U.S. Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration. There, she helped drive programs and policies to support the various innovative economic development initiatives. And prior to that, she was the Executive Director of Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship, co-chair of Startup Maryland, as well as co-founder and former CEO of Path Forward Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is a nonprofit that helped women expand economic opportunity by starting and building growth-oriented businesses. Julie has her undergraduate degree in computer science from Texas A&M. She has a master's in machine learning from the University of Maryland. We have a lot of exciting things to talk to her about today. Julie Lenzer, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you. Boy, that's exhausting listening to that.
It was long.
That's a lot.
No. It's really a neat background, and I really, I wanted to lay the groundwork for everything we're going to be getting into, just sort of showing everything you've done. But I would, Julie, I'd love to start off really by handing you the floor for a little bit. I really enjoy your mission statement on your LinkedIn page, where it basically says, you're focused on unleashing high-tech innovations to disrupt industry, save lives, and make the world a better place. You're the awesome guest for this show. With that mission statement, talk a little bit about your background, Julie, a little bit how you got so interested and passionate about this whole area of innovation, if you would.
Yeah. So like many people, I credit my love for technology to my high school teacher. She got me into computer science, and I realized that being a geek was something that I really enjoyed. And I think I credit it to being able to tell a computer what to do, and it does exactly what you tell it to do, right? And then there's a lot of creativity involved in that as well. Like solving, it's problem solving, it's logic, it's how do you solve a problem and use the computer's resources and things to do it. So I found my love of computer science early, ended up majoring in that in college, getting to do like fun stuff. Like I took artificial intelligence, I took robotics, I took, I loved that stuff. That was just an exciting thing. And when I graduated from college, computer science was it was a great point. It was a great time to graduate with a degree in computer science, but a lot of the jobs were like finance and accounting. No offense to any financial or accountants out there, but the computer side of that, just at that point in time, wasn't very exciting. And so I knew I wanted to go into either manufacturing or medical. And I ended up in manufacturing. And that was just a really cool application. You're making devices go, so you can actually see what you're doing. And it just kind of evolved from there. So my first company was Applied Creative Technologies. After a stint at IBM, I started my career with IBM, but I was in the manufacturing field there, and that's what got me into that. And I always knew that I wanted to, my personal mission statement is always to use my skills and talents to make the world a better place. And that sounds so cheesy and kind of high level, but it's really, when that's kind of your guidepost, then you start to look at how does what you choose to do, or how do the opportunities presented to you align with that, right? And my own company was a great learning experience. It was my first management job, a lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of on-the-job training. And I did that for like 10 years. And it was successful. I had Fortune 100 clients. I was customer funded. I say Procter & Gamble was my sugar daddy because they were our big company, our big customer. We developed software, and then we took what we developed and we resold it to other companies, which is a great business model if you can find it. But then about, 8-9 years in, I was like, I'm not so sure this is really the impact that I want to have and where I want to be. It was great learning experience. But so I was able to find one of our business partners actually that was interested in what we had done. We were able to kind of sell them. They took over our software and everything. And I worked for them for a couple of years, helping to sell it and integrate it into their software. And then it was like, okay, what do I do now? And that's when I was approached about teaching a women's entrepreneurship program called Activate. And love the name. And of course, it stands for something totally goofy: achieving the commercialization of technology and ventures through applied training for entrepreneurs.
That's a mouthful.
Right? And it was focused on mid-career women to help them start tech-based companies. And that's, I think, when I first got the bite at the power of empowering others, right? Of kind of taking your experiences, but then even more importantly, your networks and kind of the way that you make connections for people and bringing that to bear for lots of people. So I could have gone into another company and had some impact, or I could empower hundreds of women that went through our program, right? And have them go out and have an impact. And I think that's really where I got hooked on that kind of a ecosystem building, being a catalyst, being an enabler. So that's kind of how it all got started. And technology's always just fascinated me. I love being a geek. And one of my underlying things has been helping girls and women to see that it's okay to be technical, and that's actually really powerful. Even if you don't end up being a programmer, understanding technology and its impact and its potential is really, it's something I believe that everyone should dive into at some level.
Absolutely. I appreciate you going into all that, Julie, because I think it's a beautiful mission statement, and again, it's been a fascinating road you've been on, and it got me thinking a lot as I was reading about you and listening to some of your past presentations. Innovation, obviously, it's a very, very hot topic for our show. My background, I came out of the sort of pharmaceutical industry, and I went into sort of the innovation space, and then I got my first taste about 20 years ago or so for just sort of the sheer amount of innovation in the biotech space that was occurring in all the universities around the United States. It seems like we could solve every problem with what was just sitting there, potentially waiting to be funded. And it's interesting because, manufacturing was always sort of this side issue, right? Especially in biotech. It was like, yeah, we'll work on this drug development stuff. And sometime down the line, we'll think about, hey, we'll manufacture it in large scale for commercial opportunity. And nowadays, and we'll get to, my friend Doris Taylor, who I had on the show, who was involved with the organization. Some of that's being truncated a bit, right? As she was saying, if I want to build some hearts for the world, I can't build a very small heart today and worry about building a big heart later on. I got to figure out how to do it now, because that heart's got to work like a heart. As you've sort of taken your time going through some of these industries that you've been involved in, from quantum to AI to this whole area of immersive media and now regenerative medicine, talk a little bit about how that manufacturing piece has evolved alongside obviously the need for the core innovation, because it is such an important piece that I think sometimes gets overlooked, and we'll get
I think you're exactly right. And it's funny too, again, I started my career in manufacturing, then kind of got away from it, and I find myself back in it. And that's actually really exciting. I did just sell my steel-toed boots. So if I have to do that, I'll get some more. But manufacturing is about scale, and it's about efficiency, and it's about driving down costs. And so if you think about it, one of the companies we work with, so the heart is a great example, right? Because it can be a very artisan process where you have PhDs with Petri dishes and, kind of working through the process. There's a couple problems with that at scale. One is consistency, right. It's data collection, and it's cost, because it's very labor intensive, and a PhD can be a more expensive resource. And so applying technology to that is not about replacing humans. It's about increasing our capability to manufacture this stuff at scale, to manufacture it more consistently, to collect the data with, especially for like hearts and tissues and other organs that we're working on now. The FDA, this is a new kind of thing that the FDA is looking at. And so, not every tissue that comes out at the end, you couldn't say that they're bioidentical, because it's bio, right? It's a living organism. And so you have to be able to have really good data through your process to get the FDA convinced that this thing is consistent in its manufacture and its process, so that we can convince them to approve these to go into humans. Or, and then the idea of cost, I mean, if you look at, so regenerative has been around, especially like cells and tissues, has been around for decades. This is not new technology, right? But it wasn't until the government took a look at why we had so many early commercial failures in bringing these products to market. And one of the things that they found, in addition to the regulatory pathways and lack of standards, was manufacturing at scale. That's where they were falling down, again, because a piece of steel has pretty consistent properties that we know about, how it reacts to environment, temperature, everything. A human cell in a tissue and a construct and we don't know. We probably know, I think 50% would be generous if I say we know 50% about how the human body actually works and cells work, right? There's a lot of stuff we don't know. So trying to manufacture something consistently in that environment is crucial, right? It's crucial. And, over the last 5 years at ARMI, not the non-military one, they brought science, they brought the science in. So the people who are doing the really cool PhDs with Petri dishes, doing the cellular based research, and brought them together with engineers. And that's when scientists don't usually, it's not normal for them to be working with engineers. And so we're bringing these two people together to say, hey, look, we want to help you get this into more patients. Now, the scientists, that's what they want to hear. That's what they're excited about. But in order to do that, we need to apply some technology and collect some data and help you figure out what are your critical quality attributes of your final product as you go through your clinical trials, what tissues are successful, and back into what were the characteristics of that process that made those tissues successful and others not. So automation is the best way to do that. If you tried to do that manually, you just couldn't afford it to be into patients. And a heart's a great example, right? It's not going to be an inexpensive, but it's going to revolutionize the way we treat chronic disease. And we're even talking to companies that are doing cell-based meat products and protein. So fish and meat and chicken, great that we can create from cow cells. We can create a steak that actually tastes and looked and smells like a steak, but at $300 of the cost to create that steak, I don't think that's going to fly. That's not solving our food sustainability issues. So manufacturing is the way, and continued evolutions and innovations in raw materials and in the process, and things like that. I mean, you mentioned Doris Taylor, and she's one of my sheroes for sure. Love working with her, trying to help her with the business side of manufacturing hearts. But and she's been working on hearts for 20 years, and there were some innovations that had to happen for her to be able to move forward. Being able to take cells and turn them into stem cells and then turn them into heart cells. That's technology that's taken a couple, that was kind of it was a predicate innovation that she needed to happen in order for her to be where she is now.
Yep.
So it's just so much possibility. I think it's what's exciting about it.
Absolutely. And you're, speaking about some of these, you're really actually ahead of the curve in the sense, I've had a couple guests on the show recently in the last month or so from the White House's Office of Science Technology Policy.
Right. Yep.
We have this National Strategy for Advanced Manufacturing, which is umpteen, around hundreds of pages long, outlining every type of manufacturing possibility, bringing these products back to the United States, manufacturing in space, and so forth. Take us a little bit into, because Manufacturing USA, this was a few years ago now. You got the Departments of Commerce, Defense, and Energy all collaborating. So if you could walk us through, just for the audience's sake, Manufacturing USA into ARMI or ARMI, and then into BioFabUSA. Take us a little bit on that structure about sort of what exists today.
Sure. So, Manufacturing USA, I can't remember the year that it started, but it was out of the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, that it was kind of launched. And the idea was that we needed to create innovations in different manufacturing spaces. And so there's a network of these institutes that are focused on everything from robotics to materials to 3D printing, and biomedical or biotech manufacturing. We are one that was funded. It's part of the Manufacturing USA network. We were funded by the Department of Defense, and specifically focused on BioFabUSA is our Manufacturing USA Center Institute, if you will. So focused on, as the mission you mentioned about ARMI, and it's a membership organization. We're a nonprofit. I think all of these are nonprofits, and we're looking to work with industry primarily and academia to figure out how to remove the barriers to, or innovate new products and technologies, both, like I said, materials or fabrics. I mean, it's fascinating, some of the things that these folks are working on. And we all get together and share ideas, and one of the things is that these things were not stood up and funded by the government to always be government. We're not a government entity, if you will. We have to figure out, how do we build sustainability into the model? Now, we've been around for 5 years. We were founded in 2016, funded in 2017. So we're still fairly young, if you will. We're still, I think I consider ourselves a startup. We've got about 40 people, 40 staff members, and about 200 members are part of BioFabUSA. And a good portion of those are industry. So probably 75% of that's industry. And then another, maybe 75% of that is startups or small businesses. Some of which are researchers out of an institute, out of a higher ed, out of academia. And so for the past 5 years, we've been focusing on, our approach has always been, let's create this scalable, modular, automated, and closed system for manufacturing cells, tissues, and organs. We call it SMAC, right? scalable, that you can take a certain size bioreactor out and put in another bioreactor, or that you can daisy chain different, cell washing to do that kind of thing, and put stem cells in one end and get tissues out of the other.
Yep.
And we've done that, which is really exciting. It's called our Tissue Foundry. And so the idea as a Manufacturing USA is that now we've innovated this once. We pull in both, tissue companies, but then also biosensors or bioreactors, the enabling technology, which is a really crucial part of that. Even AI machine learning, because we have to look at all the data and figure out what are our critical control parameters. And now what we are doing is we're working with other types of tissues and cell companies to say, how can we take this generic platform or this platform and start to make tweaks for different types of products? And so we're really creating an industry that hasn't existed before. The tissue engineering, there's been one-offs. And I would say and you probably know the difference between like a cell and gene therapy and then tissue engineering.
Yep.
Cell and gene is you're using cells and modifying some genetics and stuff to create therapies. In what we're doing, the cells and the tissues are the actual therapy. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent on that, but it's interesting because we look at, we're our Manufacturing USA. So we have a network of these folks that we talk about, different opportunities and challenges that we're facing. Workforce development is a big focus of that, because you've got to have an industry of, you've got to have workers, skilled workforce. And it's not always, degree. There's some we'll always have a need for kind of, degreed 4-year degree. But now as we're introducing some of these automation technologies, even the quality control, that you need non-degreed and technical type biotechnicians, or quality control technicians.
Yep.
So, people say, oh, automation is replacing all these jobs. It's like, yes and no. I mean, it's changing the nature of the jobs.
Yep.
And it's also, I think it's opening up these jobs to a broader, like our people who didn't think they could work in some of these advanced industries, and it's opening up opportunities there.
Absolutely. It's Julie, you have an extremely impressive leadership stakeholder council at the organization, from Dean Kamen of Segway fame, and Martine Rothblatt, United Therapeutics, Jim Weinstein from Microsoft, who I had on the show last year. Talk about a little about your role as Chief Innovation Officer. Sort of what, obviously, you got all the stem cell and tissue engineering companies out there, and the artificial meat companies, and other cool things that are going on with cells. What's your day like in terms of, because it's potentially unlimited, the amount of stuff that you can put in the beginning and pop out the end of this line. What do you typically do after you have coffee in the morning and talk to your team?
I do tend to drink. I actually drink caffeinated tea, but I drink a lot of it because I need lots of caffeine. And on days like today, when I've got, go from here to, I have a thing for the Girl Scouts tonight, I'm board chair there, nice. I do drink coffee on those days. But no day is alike, right? So my role when I joined ARMI, they had been mostly focusing on the technical project side, and that's when they realized how many startups we had that needed some further assistance. And many of the institutions they come from have good entrepreneurial ecosystems, but it's not necessarily geared towards tissue engineering or the types of things that we're doing. So they recognized that they needed help with commercializing, getting these products to market, and getting these researchers focused, and getting them business assistance, right? So generally what I'm doing, and we're a small company, so there's always that other duties as assigned. When I first got here, my focus was squarely on, we had been selected as a finalist for EDA's Build Back Better grant. Okay. And it was originally 529 applicants that got winnowed down to 60. So I joined after we had made the final 60. And then they were going to, they ended up funding 21 of those 60 for an actual implementation grant. So when I got here on February 1, we had 6 weeks. There were 6 weeks left to finish this application for what turned out to be a $44 million grant, which we were one of the final 21. Nothing like learning what an institution and or organization does by writing a large grant for them, or actually 4. We had 4 of the grants that were ours. So writing the grant, figuring out how to build the ecosystem. So as I'm figuring out what we have and what we need, I'm also, as I'm building the grant, part of the grant was for a BioFab startup lab, which is, right squarely in my sweet spot of building ecosystem for startups. And so right now I'm in the process of launching that and gathering resources to help me with that. So trying to hire someone to run it, looking for, service providers and entrepreneurs in residence. Hey, anybody out there, want to come, be a kind of a CFO or CEO for hire, I've got to bring those resources to these incredible people like Doris Taylor, right? Who, she's a scientist and she's actually got a really good business sense and she's been working on this, but she wants to focus on the science. That's her strength, right? And she's been spending all her time raising money. It'd be great if she had a business partner that understood and had the same level of passion as she did that could help her kind of go out and talk to these investors. She's learning as she goes. And so that's been really meeting with different investors, meeting with different, been there, done that entrepreneurs that want to come in and work with these companies, meeting with our startup members. I'm building a list of our startup companies who are raising money and trying to connect them with investors. We have everything from pre-seed, Series A. I think within the ARMI membership, there's even companies that have gone public. So it's a nice swath of companies, and trying to pull them together to help each other. Even creating a roundtable. I'm going to be launching a roundtable in the fall, coming up in the next couple of weeks, that we can bring our companies together to help them help each other. So I think that's the thing that I love about this job is there is no 2 days alike. Helping to build out our education and workforce development team, because I see. I don't want to be like some of the other industries where you've got all these open jobs, like let's say cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
Tons of open jobs and not enough workforce.
Right.
Well, we're building the industry. We need to build the workforce at the same time and hopefully at the same pace that we're building the industry, so that as we're creating jobs, we're also creating the workforce to take those jobs, that are qualified to take those jobs. And it's a little bit of a, cart and the horse thing, It's going to be a dance that we're going to have to do to make sure that we pace these things at the right, together. But I think it's really important, because the minute you start creating a workforce and there's no jobs for them, well, they get disenfranchised. They're not going to come back. Or if you start to build the workforce or the jobs and you don't have the workforce, then people, run into a crunch. I think if it was easy, I'd be bored. And if it was easy, anybody could do it. So, I feel blessed to be around really smart people who are passionate about mission, who are teaching me, what regenerative medicine is. I'm having to learn. But, you mentioned quantum earlier. 3 years ago, I had no idea what quantum was. I mean, I'd taken physics, sure, but, and I was able to launch the quantum startup Foundry when I was there and understand enough to know that there's huge potential in that industry, but it's actually a little bit further behind, I would say, where tissue engineering is. I think the exciting thing about where I am now is that this is very close to being a reality. And the 44 million from U.S. Department of Commerce, EDA, is a big step towards that. And so we're looking to continue to grow that, even to the point of raising an investment fund. Both a philanthropic and a for-profit, because the philanthropic we need for early stage, right? It's hard for a scientist to get funding to do their IND enabling studies, right? What investor wants to get in that early? Not many. Yeah. And especially, it's an interesting economic environment we're in from a venture capital perspective. And, life sciences has seen its up and down, but I actually think our timing is perfect for this, because we're in an economic downswell. People are, going to be pulling back a little bit. Well, we're starting to build something that in, Doris, I think she says, 5 years she wants to be in humans for her clinical trials, right? That's a pretty nice cycle to be able to, 5 years, things are going to start to open up after we kind of go through this economic downturn, and we'll be perfectly positioned with we're helping these companies to kind of get to this inflection point that then when, venture capital maybe starts flowing a little bit more freely, they'll be ready.
Yep.
We'll be in the perfect placement for that.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. Absolutely. And just because you just mentioned quantum before, I just wanted to ask, because clearly, yeah, as you were saying, regenerative medicine been around for a little while in terms of some of these tools and stem cell technology, but the process, having everything integrated at this level, and then you've had experience, as I mentioned in the intro, as you're in quantum, in machine learning, some of these other, robotics and so forth, different fields, but you got to make them work together.
Mm-hmm.
Artificial intelligence, right? It's slowly but surely seeped into drug discovery, but still kind of. What's that been like? Any interesting stories there? You got a regenerative medicine person here and an artificial intelligence person here.
Yeah.
You got to make like any interesting insights there, learnings for how, I know the hot word is convergent nowadays, but this is a really convergent thing you're doing.
It is. I mean, and if you look at the history of innovation, and I did a couple semesters teaching a graduate level of innovation entrepreneurship course, right? So I love digging into some of the history of innovation and especially within the U.S. economy. And I think actually Peter Drucker's book, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, was one of my favorite, right? Because you don't think about some of the stuff, but it almost always requires diversity of thought and perspective.
Yeah.
So, it's and I think it was Einstein that said, you can't solve the problem from the same mindset that it was created, right? You need outside influences. And that's where bringing in somebody who has machine learning, data analytics background to start looking at, quality control parameters for biomanufacturing, there's a huge opportunity right there. And for, like you said, drug discovery, but even bringing in organoids or, having, the on a chip, tissues on a chip or organs on a chip, so that you can use that for drug discovery and also potentially for drug testing. Right. So now maybe you don't have to use animals anymore. You can have a heart on a chip that can at least sufficiently make sure that it's, the drug that you're using is not toxic, for your pre-IND studies. And I mean, I think everything that we do, the multidisciplinary piece of that is actually what drives the biggest innovations and breakthroughs, and looking at something from one industry that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it, but then, let's bring that into this industry and see how they converge. I mean, if you think about, I saw recently a drone light show, okay, where it could one day replace fireworks, right? If they do it right, because it's a really cool idea. But one of the things I had studied when I was in AI is swarm theory, right? So they mimic the way birds and bees swarm to program drones. And you wouldn't think about that, but that's now animal theory. I mean, agriculture, whatever, coming together with technology, biomimicry. A lot of technology comes out of nature. And so I think that if you're sitting in a room with a bunch of engineers, I actually had an argument with the dean of engineering at one point. I'm like, there's probably some good creativity there, but if you start to bring in other disciplines, you're going to come up with a better solution. And he didn't necessarily like that statement, but it's true, right? You bring in people that have different experiences, different thought processes, and different perspectives. That's where real innovation comes from.
Absolutely. Yep. Actually, you mentioned, okay, so we mentioned regenerative medicine and organs. We talked about organoids, organs on a chip, and then also mentioned some of potential things that are happening on the stem cell food front. Any other interesting or / weird proposals that you've gotten? I mean, obviously the ones you can talk. I mean, I always joke around when cause I've done several shows with the stem cell meat folks and stem cell fish and
Yeah.
all that. And I always tell my kids like who I'm talking to, and they always ask, can they make me giant squid, or can they make me a gorilla burger or something like that? But do you get any weird requests, and you just have to say no, thanks, but this is not for us. Anything along those lines that fun little fact or so about.
I'm trying to think, because I think we did have one. It was like, yeah, I don't want to be involved in that. And I can't remember exactly what it was. Yeah, I mean, some of it is, it can be, I mean, there is an ethical piece of this too,
Sure.
right? And, you start to look at, even with meat.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's use meat as an example. Now, it's going to be a long time before meat replaces actual, farms, but it's a real threat at some point to really change. You're going to put a bunch of farmers out. So are they going to fight it? You're damn right they're going to fight it. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's, we're working with somebody who's redoing lips.
Okay.
And that's an interesting thing, and it's so soft tissue regeneration. And they're also taking it then to other parts of the body that are similar, that have been mutilated in Africa, right?
Right.
How do you talk about that? How do you talk about that? It's a little hard to talk about, but it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity. But to the extent that everything has a potential of being misused, and abused. And I think that's where, the ethics behind all of this stuff has to come into play. Like you said, can they make me a giant squid? Can they, well, sure. Can you get, but just because you can doesn't always mean you should.
Right. Yeah, I always find it, because I learned recently, based on one of our guests, that Merck, the Merck of Germany, had these folks that were working on the stem cell meat, and I was like, wow, because it was I think Merck is a pharmaceutical company, of course, but here you go, these dual use opportunities. I guess that's another thing you always have to think about when you get into this. There's going to be a limit to how many ARMI facilities there are at a certain period of time, and hey, do I plug in Doris Taylor's hearts here, or do I make hamburgers? Or because just like any monoclonal antibodies and so forth, I know that was a big fear a couple decades ago. We don't have enough capacity, and well, yeah, we're always running out of capacity. But I guess that's another thing you're going to have to really think about as this thing.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the team, our technical team, that they really thought about how do we make this, kind of as this portable thing, right? Because especially tissues, organs, like there's a shelf life on them. I mean, I think Doris now has said that she can keep a heart alive for 8 days, which is actually, exponentially longer than a human heart can be kept viable. But having, we start talking about personalized medicine and having point of care, having available. Now, are you going to have a 3D printer where you can print out a heart and, while somebody's sitting in the office and then do the transplant? No, probably not. It takes a little bit longer for the cells to differentiate and mature and the heart to start beating. But might there be an opportunity to replicate this tissue foundry and put it in different places across the country and help? I mean, that's part of what we'd love to see is, how can we get these things closer to the point of care, so that, and more personalized. I think as we go towards more personalized medicine, I think that's, that's not gonna, I don't think that's going away. I think that's a trend that's still, we've just got to figure out how to do it, how to make it cost effective, and how to do it in a way that it gets through the FDA. I mean, the FDA was put into, with the idea of protecting the consumer and protecting the patient. Sometimes it makes it hard to innovate and get things, and it certainly makes it expensive. But that's where, I don't want to get into all drug costs and the costs of R&D, because it's huge. But, I mean, that's, I think, where the US, even though we do have the FDA, we also have, with our patent system, a unique incentive for innovation that, you get a 17-year monopoly, although drugs take can take 15 years to get there, so you don't have much left on your patent. But
Yep.
We have a unique opportunity here to really be leaders in this.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Julie, aside from obviously this amazing portfolio and everything you're doing with ARMI and BioFab, I know you're still quite actively involved with the Girl Scouts, and I saw some article recently about some major grant or refurbishment of the Girl Scout camp that you were. Just say a few words about some of what's going on there, because I always like to talk about the next generation on the show, and hoping that more of the next generation listens to the show, listens to thought leaders and innovators like yourself, because we need that next generation to come along and keep doing more of the same thing. But talk a little bit about your involvement with the Girl Scouts organization in general.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. That's something I love to talk about. So I've been on the board about 9 years now. And so it's been something. I was the treasurer the last couple of years, but a few years ago, we identified that we really needed to upgrade our camps. Girls deserve flushing toilets, and they want flushing toilets. I mean, it's something so simple. None of our camps have flushing toilets, right? You can still be rugged. There's still opportunities to go camping on, that you can dig your own hole and pitch your own tent. But girls oftentimes, especially if they don't have a camping experience with their family's not campers, or they've come from 2 working parents. This is not, outdoors is a great leadership training and confidence building venue especially for girls. And so we've been working on this for years. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, had a celebration. We were able to raise the first tranche of money to renovate our camp. And this is the really the transformational part of the renovation, where, it's hard to look at a dilapidated, very old and campsite and vision what it could be in the future. And so now we've been able to raise enough money, and we sold another camp property, which was always an interesting experience with the Girl Scouts, and put all that money into this new camp. And this will be kind of where we'll start to do all the unsexy utilities and things like that. Get water, so you can have a flushing toilet. That's an expensive but not sexy part of it. But now we'll start to have cabins that you can see, that you can start to envision what this will look like for the girls, so that then we can raise the second half of the funding we need to build out, a ropes course for the girls, or, a waterfront. We actually are on the water in Annapolis. And so there's opportunities for, water activities and swimming and canoeing and sailing. And so it builds confidence in these girls. And that's what we need, is confident leadership training for the next generation. And if you look at, there's been articles about, I think every female astronaut has been a Girl Scout, I think, and how many, women in Congress were Girl Scouts. And, every time I read the Girl Scout Law and Promise and talk about building girls of confidence and courage and leaders, I just get recommitted to why this is a great organization to work with. And, you want something done, give it to a busy person. When I was approached about being the board chair, coming on as board chair for the next two years, it was also when I was starting my new job at ARMI. And I'm like, I don't want to do, a half-assed job. I want to be able to get in. And so I took a month to think about it and get into my new job and make sure that I could balance the two, because I don't want to do anything half-assed. I want to give it my all. And I'm a huge fan of our CEO, and I really want to support her, and I'm just excited about the mission, and I decided that I'll figure it out. Figure it out. It's worth it. I want to help make geek chic. I want to be, I want to help girls understand that technology is a great way to change the world. Absolutely. And that's what a lot of them want to do. They want to make a difference. They want to change the world, and technology is an ideal vehicle. It's not the only vehicle, but it's an ideal vehicle for that.
Absolutely. Julie, anything else sort of hot coming up for the rest of 2022 as we get into 2023 in terms of conferences that you're going to be presenting at, talks you're going to be giving, places that we can see you, meet you possibly? Anything that I missed that's coming up, please take the floor.
Yeah, no. So, we're a big sponsor of our Advanced Therapies Week, Facilitate with a
Okay.
PH.
Okay.
And I'll be leading a panel there on funding for, these types of startups. So bringing together, companies that have raised funding, entrepreneurs and investors to talk about what does that landscape look like. In a couple of weeks, we have our meeting in the Mill Yard coming up, which is we do this twice a year, where we bring in members and non-members to explore different things about the tissue engineering workspace. And with the launch of the BioFab Startup Lab, we're also going to be putting together a BioFab Investment Summit coming up next year. We don't have a date for that yet, but there's different. We just came back from meeting on the Mesa, which is a cell and gene therapy type conference, and it was a great conference for us. We've met a lot of our members that way and a lot of our partners that way. But it is still focused on cell and gene, and so we want to build on that.
Yep.
To bring about this tissue engineering, cells, tissues, and organs, and support and enabling technologies, the sensors and the bioreactors. So yeah, so there's a lot of exciting things going on. We'll be taking applications for our first cohort of startups that want to come through the BioFab Startup Lab, and recruiting service providers and entrepreneurs in residence and mentors. And I'm working on another grant application for the National Science Foundation because, why not? Because we're not done yet.
Yeah.
We're not done yet. We're not there yet. There's more to be done here. To build an industry is not a small undertaking. But again, if it was easy, anybody could do it. And I'd be bored.
Well, I'm sure glad that you are doing it, because it clearly is a major undertaking. That as you said in your bio, you're certified at getting shit done, and you clearly this is an area that's in terms of its advanced nature, in terms of its convergent nature, is something that really falls right into your basket of leadership. So I'm glad you're doing it. And
well, thank you. I think, one of the message, and I give this to, I speak at a lot of universities and to, the Girl Scouts. It's like, I never would have seen this coming in my, if I had thought back 20 years ago and said, where am I going to be in 20 years? No way would I have picked regenerative medicine or, even biotech.
Right.
But I also didn't know that I would have wanted to work at the White House, or work in as a government appointee, and I know for sure I didn't think I wanted to be in academia. In fact, I said that when I was leaving the administration. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm pretty sure it's not academia. Bing, where did I go? University of Maryland. But it was a great learning experience. And I think it's about following the thread. And, it all does. My career has not certainly been a straight line. It's been, I call it the kind of the twisty river, winding river, but it all makes complete sense in hindsight. And, it's just exciting to be able to work with somebody like Dean Kamen. I mean, you want to talk about off the charts, brilliant and passionate and smart. Just sitting in a room and watching his brain work is awe-inspiring, to be honest with you. And he is the real deal with respect to, he is mission focused, he's passionate, he's dogged in his pursuit of impact. And that's fun to be a part of they call it the Decaverse, the Dean Kamen universe. It's just, I was actually talking to my younger brother a couple weeks ago, and somehow it came up, and he said he felt like he was always the smartest person in the room. And I said, well, then you're in the wrong room. I said, if I am the smartest person in the room, I know that I'm in the wrong room. And that's the way you grow. And I love learning. I think it's a lifetime pursuit if growing and learning, and there's always something to grow and learn and give back, and to kind of, really use the skills and talents that you're given, and the opportunities to make the world a better place.
Awesome story. Really awesome story. For everybody that is going to be listening to this particular episode of our show across the various podcast networks, or watching on the YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Julie Lenzer, Chief Innovation Officer, Advanced Regenerative Medicine Institute, BioFabUSA, unleashing high-tech innovation to disrupt industry, save lives, and ultimately make this world a better place. Julie, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while about these topics. Obviously, thank you for everything you're doing there at ARMI and BioFab. And as we like to say on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow for everybody out there doing what you're doing. It's a really very inspiring story.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to give back, and help make change, move change.
Absolutely. Good seeing you.